Okay, good evening, everyone. This is Ron. Uh, we can get started this evening. We'll continue with our discussion we've had the last couple of days. We've been talking about African history, our history, and bringing it up to date as to where we are and why we are here. The spiritual purpose of where we are and what we are doing. So this gives it some roots. This gives us something to see ourselves and understand ancestry a little better and a little deeper as we've been discussing. So with that said, we'll see if we have any questions, and I'll give it to Pastor, and he can open up in either way he desires.
Um, I will begin as we have begun before, and that is what the quote from James Baldwin: "An African American is an African without memory and an American without privilege." And also, Willie Lynch. Willie Lynch said, if you keep the body and take the mind. And we'll talk more about that because I have some things I want to put with that and explain it, okay? However, I want to address a statement that Lindsey Graham made some time ago when he made the statement that a Black man can be anything he wants in this country if he becomes a conservative. A Black man can be anything he wants in this country if he assimilates, if he does what we tell him to do, if he loses himself in our culture, if he gives up everything he believes about himself, if he stands against his own people, if he stands in the way of progress for those who are less fortunate in terms of being able to care for their families. He can be anything he wants to if he turns his back on all of the negativity that's directed toward him. He can be anything he wants as long as he doesn't make any noise, as long as he doesn't challenge anything we say or do. That's what Lindsey Graham is saying. Now, how does this relate to Willie Lynch? In order for you to assimilate, you keep your body, but your mind is taken, or you lose your mind, or you give your mind up, meaning that you don't have the space to think the way you want to think. You think the way they want you to think. And I'll give you a classic example. Every time that we consider doing something in February with Caucasians or with Europeans, with white people in this country, they want to tell us how far we can go in our history. They want to tell us that they want to talk about either the west coast of Africa and then end up in slavery. They want to talk to us about being captured into slavery and slavery itself, but never beyond that. That's what I get from Lindsey Graham's message. That's how I see it functioning to keep us caught up in the Willie Lynch syndrome, not having a mind of your own and being happy with that, giving up all of your giving up your integrity, your empathy, your sympathy, all these things that we deem not only necessary but mandatory to be a human. That's how I read that. And why do I say that? Because I have never never in my experiences interacted with anyone who is a white American who encouraged me to go beyond where I was at that moment without inferring that I had to give up my culture or give up my walk with my people. I had to be different. And that says to me that your expectation is for me to live in your world. When I was in college, I think it's around my 8th year in college, because I went 10 years. But around my eighth year in college, I went to I did a lecture in a class, and we left that lecture and we went to Sean Thurman delivered a message, and the message that he delivered to us, we had to write a paper about it. And then he came to our classrooms next, not that day, but later. He and what's his name? What was his right hand man name? He died with a brain tumor.
Black guy.
White guy.
The black guy?
No, the white guy.
No.
I almost called his name. Anyway,
No.
when you think of it, let's tell me, okay? They came to me and asked me to join their team. And I said no. And they called me, and people will tell you, they called me almost every day for 2 weeks. And I said to them, no. And I said, if I join your team, then who am I going to be able to turn to? Because my people are not going to trust me. And he said to me that if you join my team, you'll be so rich, you won't even care whether they trust you. So what was that saying to me? I had to be disrespectful, first of all, to the expectations of my people. And then on top of that, I had to follow a policy that was detrimental to my people. I had to, and that was part of the game. You go pay me to do this. So I would have sold my soul to racism. So when I say that, it is the example of what Lindsay was saying when he said you can be whatever you want to be if you become conservative. The last thing I want to say about that before I ask for questions or comments is, how is it that Lindsay felt so comfortable saying if you become a conservative? How come he didn't say if you are a patriotic American? He said a conservative. Why? Probably 90% of all the politicians, white politicians in this country, are conservatives. And they pass themselves off as liberals. The policies, if they were not, then the policies of conservatism would not always win. From the inception of this country, the South has always ran this country. There is no doubt about that. No question about that. That's always been the case. And so that's where we are at this point, and that's what I believe with everything in me. Well, not just believe, that's what I see from the statement that Lindsay made, not based on just him, but based on the history of this country. Questions, comments, does it make sense?
The other thing about it that is so presumptuous. It's so presumptuous of him to think that he is the authority enough to describe what's best for the Black man, depending on whether he is a conservative or not. It's like he's already put his definition around that
He's already,
authority that others
Barbara,
think they
you
have.
folks, would you say that again, please?
I just thought it was very presumptuous of him to say what he said, to try to define the limits of the Black person based on his definition of conservatism,
Right.
and it's just like in education today. You try to define the race, as you said, they try to set the parameters and then try to put you in that box to define you based on the parameters they set for you. So I thought he was arrogant and presumptuous.
Thank you. You're absolutely right, he was. Anyone else? Any questions, comments?
I have a question.
Sure.
What Lindsey Graham said about Black people, doesn't that also apply to people of color when you look at the Native Americans or the Indians when they were dealing with the British and all the Polynesians? Does that also apply to them as well, the concept?
The concept does, but not really. They don't care what they do. Keep in mind that any bill that's passed, anything that this government decides they're going to do, they only take Africans into consideration. When they are speaking about conservatism, when he said Black man, he meant Black people, period. If you think about how easy it is for someone from whether it's the Pacific Islands or whether it's from India or whatever country, Japan, it's much easier for them to come to this country and get a loan to start a business than it is for us to get a loan to do anything. They can more easily get a loan. They can easily get a loan for a business, and we can't get a loan for a house. So I don't. I think that people other than the African are an afterthought, because there are things that we are limited to that they are not. They meaning other people of color. Does that answer your question, Mara?
It does, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have often thought that that was the case in Egypt. They said they imprisoned them or enslaved them rather because they were growing in number. But if they had assimilated and become Egyptians, why was there any reason to worry about their numbers? They never ceased being Hebrews, and that was the intimidating part of it. Otherwise, why would you need to enslave them?
May I address that?
Please.
When we look at it through the eye of it being an allegory, it's a message to us. Regardless of the hardships that you face, it doesn't matter what you have to go through. You should not assimilate. Trust who you are, and you will be guided from the hardship or from the servitude that you've been forced into. Trust who you are. when we talk about it being an allegory, who brought them out of Egypt? Moses drew them out. So if we look at it through the eye of the allegory, the Creator says, there will be one raised up who will bring you out of bondage. That's speaking to us today as clearly as it has spoken to others in the past. So I believe that the message in that what you described, Ron, is far deeper than a group of people who decided that they were not going to acquiesce to the authorities' desires. Does that make sense to you, sir?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Any other questions or comments?
Can you repeat what it was that Lindsey Graham said?
Oh, let me put it back up. Lindsey Graham said, a black man can have anything in this country if he becomes a conservative. That was when, after he won the election from Jamie. The last time that he was elected, he said that right after that election. Atwater, Phoebe remembered his name. His name was Atwater, Lee Atwater. That's whose name I was trying to think of. So, and Audrey?
Yeah, but I'm not sure. I'm not even sure that is true, because because from the beginnings, white people have felt like black people were meant to be in slavery. And the Bible says says slaves should be in slavery forever. And I feel like they believe that. So, I mean, they might let one or two come over to that side, and whatever he meant by they'll do well as a conservative, I guess he means make money. But I mean, they might let a few do that. But if all of us moved over to the Conservative Party, no, they wouldn't have it, because they're all Dixiecrats. They'd have to change all their policies, their political agenda, because I don't think we would have this voter suppression thing. We wouldn't stand for it if we were conservatives or whatever. So I don't really believe, he doesn't even believe that's true.
Oh, he doesn't.
I don't believe it's true, and I don't think he believes it's true. He's just voicing whatever, some rhetoric.
You're right. He doesn't believe that, Audrey. But guess what? Everything you said that will have to change, that applies to the Democrats too.
True.
I mean, you know, when you think about it, it was Bill Clinton who signed the bill in 1996 that says if a state court, appellate court rules against you, I'm trying to think of what the instance, the crime is, that the federal court cannot intervene. I just remember exactly what the count was, what it involved. And Bill Clinton is the one who signed the 96 crime bill. And Bill Clinton is the one who made a deal with the Republicans to become Democrats. They call them blue dog Democrats. Bill Clinton is the one who removed the most of the safety net from people who need it the most. And we can go down the list of what Bill Clinton did while having Black people on the back and picking a pocket at the same time. So I don't see the policies of the liberal being anything other than more deceptive and the Republicans being in your face. That's the only difference I see. If that were the case, then if it was serious, then why is it that Biden went after this Build Back Better program instead of dealing with voter suppression? Why did he not spend his capital pushing that bill through the John Lewis bill that would strengthen the Voting Act? Why would he not do that? When he knew, just as I know, just as you know, it's more important to get people to the polls than it is to get a bill through. You get people to the polls, you win. You get the bill through, you may or may not win because of voter suppression. He could have stopped that. The other thing is, if you read the Constitution and you read the section that deals with voting, what you will see is that the place, the time, and the method of voting is left to the states, except if the Congress decides to establish the time, the place, or in other words, the norms for voting. Congress can do that at any moment they want to. So why is it that he or none of the rest of them, inclusive Obama, why did they not put that out there? Why did they not emphasize that? The reason they didn't? Because they knew they didn't have to. 99% of the people in this country don't know what's in the Constitution, and always talking about you walking on their constitutional rights. Think about this. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment was written into the Constitution for us as a people. They call them the Black Amendments. And white people have benefited from those amendments far more than we have. They use them as a method to get what they want. The Civil Rights Bill, white people used that more than we did, especially white women. When it came to equality in hiring, when it came to promotions, fair pay, equal pay, white women used that more than we did. Or not used it, rather, they got more benefits from it than we did. So regardless of what's set up for us, it doesn't work out that way. And we are a people who are capable of doing major things, big things. We were talking, I think last time, I guess yesterday, about the tenements of slavery and how we were affected by the war, the Civil War, and we talked about how we were offered the 40 acres in the mule. And one thing that I intended to mention, well, a couple of things. One is sharecropping, and two is when I asked about Greenwood District, what I intended to follow up with that is this. In Tulsa, in the Greenwood District, all of us know that it was an African enclave, and it was burned to the ground in 1921. However, let's look at what happened before that. In 1877, Reconstruction was ended. And Africans were left with nothing. They had nothing that they could sustain themselves with. So what they did, they started sharecropping. And I'm gonna get back to Tulsa in a moment. They started sharecropping. And some of you know what sharecropping is, right? Sharecropping, for those of you who don't know, is when you sign a contract or enter a contract, verbal contract with the landowner that you will work his land and the portion of your, all the land, it will be worked for a share of the crops. You would put the labor in, you would harvest, and you would get a share of the crop. However, you had to use all the equipment of the landowner. You had to use the seeds of the landowner. You stayed in the shed of the landowner, and everything that your life needed to be sustained, you got it from the owner of the property. So when it came time to get your share, so you could move away from sharecropping and do something on your own, you always was in the hole, because now you owe me for rent for the shack. You owe me for the food that you ate. You owe me for the equipment that you used. So, and now you owe me for the seed that you sowed, that you planted. So now you are in the hole and you never get out of the hole. And you're there generation after generation. That's sharecropping. Did I miss anything? Those of you who know what sharecropping is. Okay.
Nope.
Nope,
talking
you didn't.
right.
Okay. Thank you. So sharecropping was slavery. My grandmama was a sharecropper on my mama's side. My grandmama, for all intents and purposes, grew up a slave. She was a sharecropper as a little girl. And when she reached adulthood, when she married my granddaddy, she said, I'll do it only if my children don't have to be sharecroppers. And he said, Rosa, the children won't be sharecroppers and you won't have to work anymore. And they got married and the rest is history, as they say. I inject that because I want you to see how close slavery is to us in terms of the generations out of slavery. We can't count generations out of slavery from 1865. We have to count generations out of slavery when sharecropping fell by the wayside, which was like in the 40s. Yes, 40s, 50s, wasn't it? Sharecropping pretty much ended.
Sir,
Yes.
what about the part where if you try to leave, if you try to argue with the landowner and the
Okay.
system involved?
If you tried to argue with the landowner, you were lynched or you were arrested. And not only could you be arrested, you could be sentenced to work for that man for 10 years or whatever the years were. So
For free.
for free, yes, for free. So there was no way around the institution of slavery that was called sharecropping. Once you were stuck in the system, you were stuck. And very rarely you could get out of it. So what I'm saying in essence is this. If we count generations out of slavery from 1865, that is totally wrong, because Abraham Lincoln did not free any slaves whatsoever. He did not have the authority to do it. He wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, but it had no effect in the Confederate States at all. What freed enslaved people were the armies that were fighting. And the Emancipation Proclamation did not apply to the state of Maryland, the state of West Virginia, and the state of Kentucky. Any states who had slaves that did not secede from the Union did not have to give them up based upon the Emancipation Proclamation. So it did not free us. You understand? Can you see what I'm saying? Or understand what I'm saying? Can you see?
Wasn't it also an executive order? I mean, it wasn't a law, it was just an executive order.
Yes.
So the next person could have reversed it.
Yes. The next person could have reversed it. And he did not reverse it after Lincoln was assassinated because of people like Grant. There were too many people who had fought and died in the army, in the Union Army, that were not going to stand for that. Plus, there were Union troops in slave states to ensure and to protect enslaved people, people who had just been free from slavery. So there are a lot of dynamics at play in what happened during this period. So I'm saying that sharecropping began to fall by the wayside in the 40s. And then in the late 40s, after World War II, there was a great exodus of Africans from the South to the North. And that's what ended sharecropping. Now, it ended sharecropping on a large scale, but there were people still enslaved in this, especially the southern states, Mississippi, Texas, South Carolina, until the early 60s. Now, understanding when you were pushed off of the plantation, you had no 40 acres, you had no mule. You had nothing. So with your nothing, when Reconstruction ends, there are a group of people who began to migrate to the territory of Oklahoma. And between 1889 and 1891, there was a huge number of people, of Africans, who migrated to that area. In 1920, that's when Greenwood was formally recognized as a district. That's when they formally embraced the idea that they had their own place. And it was, I believe, Booker T. Washington went to speak to them, and he is the one, he encouraged them to continue what they were doing. And he talked about how he had set up the same type of enclave right outside of Tuskegee. And the man who helped him do that, his last name was Green. And in honor of this man, in terms of land surveying and the logistics for setting the town up. And that's why Greenwood they call it Greenwood District in honor of him. Now, think about this. There were over 5,000 homes in the Greenwood district. There were, what, 5 to 10 grocery stores. There were 4 theaters, more restaurants than I can remember. They had everything that they needed. It was one thing missing. Can you guess what that one thing missing? They did not have poverty. There was no poverty in that district. Everybody was taken care of. Now do the math. If they left from 1889 to 1891, and by 1920, that was approximately what, 29, 30 years, right? But before they, what you call it, when you establish something, formally establish something as a town. Anyway, they had a ribbon cut or something to make sure that everyone had identified with the Greenwood district who lived there. How is it that a group of people with nothing within the span of 30 years can establish a whole community, a whole town, a town that exceeded anything that was in Tulsa itself? On the other side of the railroad track, there was nothing to match it. How did they do that? Think about it. Able to do that. Go
I
ahead,
mean,
Audrey.
they had built everything else, so they had skills.
The skills did it, but guess what they used to get the lumber? They cut the lumber themselves.
Mm.
They built the lumber themselves. And what they had to purchase, they did it with nickels and dimes and pennies and built that town. They raised their own food. So they built that town from scratch with their own ingenuity. They did not seek assistance from those who had enslaved them. In I think it's 1921, is when they burned it down. And the question becomes, why could it not survive? Because it wasn't supposed to. Our freedom was not to come from the hands of those who enslaved us. The stroke of a pen did not free us. I want to read something to you. And you're going to see in a moment why I say that. How is it that Willie Lynch could say, keep the body, take the mind? This is how he said he did it. You create differences. And the differences that you create, age, you discriminate, or you are create a different, I'm older than you, or you disrespect me because I'm old. The other one is color. You darker than me, the Brown Bag Society in Charleston, they don't have brown bags now, but the mentality is still there. Straight hair or kinky hair. Intelligence, size, sex, size of the plantation, status on the plantation. I work for GM and you work for UPS, or you are a clerk at Walmart, but I work for GM. Does that make me better than you? But those are the things that he was talking about that to use to create dissension. And I'm not going to read all of them, but he said that distrust is stronger than trust. Envy is stronger than adulation or respect. Now, I want to ask you guys, have you encountered any of those that I read? Have you ever seen it happen? We see it all the time. We just don't pay it any attention. That's the wilderness syndrome. People are jealous because of where you live and they are not there. Why? Because that's been instilled in us. We are still caught up in that syndrome. When I say we, I know as far as I'm concerned, I know I have been free from that syndrome. Because I refuse, and on several occasions, to allow myself to get caught up in what someone else has. Even though some of the people I grew up with have means far more than I, and my response to them when they're boasted is this: you have a house, I have a house. Everybody has a house. We all do the same thing in our house. It doesn't matter how large or how small it is, it functions the same way. I have a car, you got a more expensive car. But you cannot go any place I can't go. But my car would carry me where I want to go too. So how I did that and still do that to point out to them how stupid it is to measure who you are based on things. To separate yourself from your people because you feel like you're better than them because what you have accumulated. I remember riding with George in Philadelphia. And I said to George, all of these churches and nothing has changed. The reason nothing has changed is because out of all of these churches, the people who attend these churches moved to the suburbs. They moved out of Philly. The pastor he doesn't even come unless he has a meeting or Sunday. So how in the world can you talk about you are a church and you are here to enhance the lives of people around you and you are not there? And if they come in your building, you escort them out because their clothes are dirty or they smell like a reek of alcohol. You remember that, George? We were talking? A church on every corner?
Yes.
You about to say something?
No, you were correct in what you were saying.
Oh, thank you. So that is the Willie Lynch syndrome that we are witnessing when that happens. The idea of us having a Black History Month, think about that. February was chosen, I think it was Carter G. Woodson, because of Lincoln's birthday and my mind is not working for me right. Frederick Douglass' birthday. And it used to be Black History Day. Then it was Black History Week. Then it's a month. So now, what does that say to us? We give you 1 month to say what you got to say about yourself. As long as you talk about it from slavery to now. 1 month. After that, we done. You don't even exist anymore. For the next 11 months, we don't want to hear nothing about your history or you. Can you see the psychology in that? The effect that it has subconsciously. We have bought into it so deeply until we are invisible to each other. We treat each other like we don't exist. And I'm not talking about those who are committed to the journey. I'm talking about where the Africans who have bought into the lie of the society. I've had calls with people telling me that they had no clue about what we've been talking about the last couple of days. They had no inkling of our having existed prior to. And they knew we came from Africa, but all the other stuff they did not know. They did not know that the whole of humanity came from the womb of an African woman. They did not know that. And then there were those who said, I knew we were from royalty. I've been hearing it all my life. I knew that we came from a place that had kingdoms and kings and I knew that we built everything in this country because of the skills that we brought with us. I knew all of it. But I was never able to understand what all of that meant. And when we talked about the kingdom of the Kush, and we talked about what came from that, and we talked about the Shabaka stone, we talked about all of these, the principles or the laws, the 42 laws. We talked about that, and what they were saying was, now I see. And guess what? They were talking about how different they felt about themselves. That should tell us the reason that we are limited to 1 month and can talk about only what we are told to talk about us. Here we are, 2023. And we still talk about ourselves within the confines of the box that they put us in. We get jacked up about 4th of July. We get all black when it comes to February. Our kente cloth and all of that in February. Rest of the year, we don't even think about each other. One of the things that I have noticed and that I embrace 1,000%, I have noticed that there is a conscious movement away from the 4th of July because of Juneteenth. I've noticed that Juneteenth is no longer an event that takes place on the mall in DC with all of the countries of the continent being represented. I noticed that it's beginning to take place in small towns all over this country. There is an awakening that has taken place. What I gathered from what we have been talking about the last few days is that our eye has been open, but the vision of the eye is clearer now. That energy that we experienced during the course of what we are talking about, that feeling that we had that we could not explain, especially when we got off and thought about what we had experienced. That is the clarity, there's the clarifying agent or the clarifying energy to our eye. And we will be able to discern, let me put it in these terms, we'll be more able to read the signs of the times than ever before. And all the things that are taking place now, Biden, Trump leading him in the polls, who cares? That's not going to do anything for us anyway. That's not going to free us. That's not going to free humanity. That's not going to free the Europeans. That's not going to free anyone. I was talking to Ronnie. He was talking about how the mind of the European is in bondage, just like our mind. And we concluded that that's the reason we are still where we are in terms of not having freed anyone, because our minds have been in bondage with those who kept us in bondage. And the reason their minds are in bondage is because they're trying to figure out how to do nothing for us. Our minds are in bondage because we're trying to one-up each other. If our minds are not free, how in the world can we expect to free someone else? Because we don't know what it means. One of the important things that I've gleaned from the last few days is this. There could not be any deliverance until the deliverer knew what deliverance looks like. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? That's one of the most important features of what I gleaned from what we're doing. We freed our minds in the last few days. We had opportunity to do it if it was not done. I have not seen this journey for the last few days as a discussion about history. At the onset, that was what we intended to do, but we had a serendipitous experience. When we got to beginning took over. The energy of the ancestors, the energy from the Twa, the energy from the Umbuti, the energy from the Kushites, the energy of our people who've gone before us, our ancestors, that energy took over. And rather than having a discussion about history, we had a clarification about spirituality. And we learned something about that. History and spirituality cannot be separated. They are one and the same. And that is the reason there is no spirituality in the three largest religions. There's no spirituality at all. All of it is cerebral, or all of it is manipulative. There's no spirituality there. How can there be spirituality there when you don't know what it is? We went looking for something and got apprehended by what we needed. We were looking for ourselves in history, and we saw ourselves as deliverers clearer than we ever saw ourselves. When we talk about being the most spiritual people in the earth, now we can see what that means, what it feels like. And the responsibility of it is not to put anyone down, but to raise everyone up. The responsibility that comes with that demands that the truth be spoken regardless of the consequences. The demands of knowing who you are, experiencing it, and knowing that this is about humanity and not about one group of people. This is about clearing the earth of dysfunctionality. That responsibility is a great responsibility, and we have to see it for what it is. We do not learn in order to prove someone wrong. We don't teach to prove someone wrong. We do not study to impress anyone. We study for oppression can be lifted from everyone. That's our goal. From day one, when we started this journey, we had no clue. We talked about spirituality. We talked about spirituality for years. We even bought everything that we could find that helped us to teach and understand spirituality, but we did not know what it was until we experienced it. Saturday, Sunday, and now. We experience what it is. And I'll challenge any of you who had this experience, this energy flow, this feeling that you've never had before. I challenge you to explain to me what it is. How does it feel? How does it look? It's an experience that is shown on your face, in your actions. But can you write a paragraph describing what it is? Can you articulate in 10 minutes how to relive that experience? The way we relive the experience is by remembering who we are. Think about it. We talked about being Elohim, one yet many. We found out something. Until we go back to the garden of life and recognize it as being the garden of life or the garden of Eden, whatever you want to call it. Until we were able to do that, we could not be who we were created to be. We found out that being Elohim is no different than being one yet many in terms of a Kabbalah, in terms of a spiritual essence so deep and so real, until when you embrace it, you cannot help but desire to share it with everyone around you, not just the people in your orbit, but every human on this earth. I guarantee you, there's not one of you on Zoom or on the phones or within this group that have a desire to keep all for yourself and not share it with humanity. You can't have that experience and be selfish. You cannot have that experience and be blind to the flaws in you, which causes you to stop pointing out someone else's fault. this experience that we had and still having has opened a gateway that we have never experienced before. Crossing the threshold. When we cross the threshold of the gateway on 11/11/2023, when we cross that threshold, we crossed and we went into a Kabbalah. We went into a Kabbalah. Now, I'm not talking about the landmass. We went into a Kabbalah. We went into the Garden of Eden. We went into the place where life had its inception in this earth. We went to the place where that space between spirituality and the first human, that's where we went. And what we observed there is this. The first human was spiritual before, but how did the ingredients of that body become one with that spirit? How did that breath close the gap so that there was not space at all between the human and the breath that created it? That's where we went when we crossed the threshold. And going there made us different. We are different than we have ever been in our lives. And now we are able to function as Elohim. And the only reason we won't do it is because you don't want to. The energy is there, the understanding is there, the opportunity is there, and we are in dire straits with humanity now. It is imperative that we take the experiences and feed them to the whole of humanity so that we will not see a repeat of what's happening in Israel and Gaza. So we will not have to turn the TV off because the pain of people being murdered. We couldn't stand that. So we won't have to do that again. Our desire is to bring this thing to, our desire is to empty ourselves into the macro so that kids don't have to hide on the desk anymore in schools, and we don't have to be concerned about a group of white supremacists chasing someone and lynching them. We don't have to be concerned about a policeman killing someone as opposed to serving everyone. Our experience has equipped us to be who we were created to be. If you cannot handle in terms of embracing and holding on to it, that you are the God and gods of this earth, I don't see how any one of us cannot see that when we know that in the Kabbalah, that's where all of it came from. And we know that it's the breath that brought into existence, that womb that brought us into existence. I don't know how we can believe that we are anything less than the one who created us in his image. The image that he created us in is his breath. The bodies that he gave us was for us to be one with the universe and this celestial ball called Earth, one with all of things, so that we could be one with each other. The Creator never intended to create us so that we can instantly do that. We are Elohim. We create in our image and likeness. And our image and likeness is not the color of your skin. It's not when you were born. The image and likeness are principles of loving kindness. They are principles of forgiveness, mercy. They're the principles of empathy. They are the principles that leads us and guides us to a place where we only want to make sure that humanity is one with each other and that our surroundings are balanced. And I'm not just talking about the balance between humans. I'm talking about the balance in the earth. If we are to be the dominators of this earth, if we are to be that, then everything that is out of kilter is relying on us to bring it into balance. The harmony that we seek must first be seen in us. And what we experienced at the beginning was what harmony feels like. We experienced one soul. We experienced the joy that the Creator has in seeing that there are those below who is doing everything to make below as above. That's who we are. Those are our obligations. Bring humanity to a place of balance, regardless of what it takes. I'm done. Questions, comments? Talk to me. Ron?
Okay. No questions, anyone?
Wow.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, somebody saying something?
No, I was just inhaling and exhaling because I'm just truly grateful because I'm going back to my encounter of a Kebelon, everyone back in 2011. And I know I go back to that 11 for a reason, because that was the beginning of my Kabbalah experience in terms of just really grasping what a Kabbalah means. And as I went back and looked at the definition, or I looked at it being the mother of mankind or the Garden of Eden, it talked about a Kabbalah is the oldest and the only word of indigenous origin. When Evelyn mentioned yesterday about a Kabbalah 101, and I just wanted to share this because I don't know if Evelyn is on.
She is.
Okay, but this journey, for me, went back to look at the I don't want to say movies, but looking at the history of the Hidden Color. And in there, Pastor, I know we spoke about it and I might have shared it before, but there's 4 documentaries that speak about our African history. And what Evelyn was speaking about, drew me to that. And this was something that I looked at years ago, but But while we having this discussion tonight, so it's more than religion. It's more than spirituality. It's the experience. And I think for me, the experience of meeting all of you and looking at retrospectively where I'm at today, my search and my journey was to look at beginnings, Ron, and past and everybody on the call. And I told Pastor Richards, I say, look, I want to go to the earliest point of origin in terms of who I am and what I need to know. And this journey has helped me, not because of my own personal journey, but the journey of being connected to the oneness of who all of you are and who I am connected to. And Pastor, you have given us, and others have shared, about historians have shared about what we may have read or things that come into our possession. But as you say, Pastor, do your research. And tonight, the master teachers, those of you who have enlightened me spiritually, I cannot thank you all enough, because I'm coming to a point of peace that my experience is one that my meditations and my prayers have answered. So as we continue in this journey, as I said, Evelyn's comments yesterday just, again, just poured out in my spirit, because we are giving the opportunity to be the light, not in a way in terms of, again, being not who we are, but just our presence being one that people can see the spirit of unity, the spirit of harmony, the spirit of oneness, because again, everything has happened after what was written on the stones was written, on the water, in the water. And I think that, again, to be able to see it as so above, so below, it's not easy to verbally for me to explain, but I know it's in me. And I think that as I look at history, I just cannot, thank all of you again enough, because I see the holistic spirit that I am. And I think the more that we're able to appreciate the journey, Pastor Richards, I can only say that what I'm hearing, what I've been taught, what we all been taught in terms of looking at Tep Haseb, coming to a conclusion using an accurate method. I see the artifacts, I see the evidence, and to be able to have access to that today, as I mentioned to you about education, there's a lot of things that, we can go back to school for in terms of academic intelligence. But I know that in my soul and in my spirit, when we talk about psychology is the heart and soul of a spirit being. And so it's not the psychology, the academic intelligence, but it's the heart, it's the soul. And again, I just wanted to share those thoughts tonight, because again, I know, as Evelyn mentioned yesterday, and again, it just connected to my spirit so heavy, that I just wanted to say, just again, to all of you, I am because we are. So thank you for being who you are. I'm done, Pastor.
Thank you. Barbara?
I wanted to just concur with what George said. The difference for me has been the total experience. Like you talked about going back to Al-Kebalan, but it's more than the discussion and the words that were used and the examples that were used. It was the experience. And one knows something when one has experienced it. And so to experience the unicity just kicks it up another level completely. And so it's the experience of being Elohim. That's the only thing I can say. To experience that is too sweet. I can't put words to it right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I would
I have
just
a
think,
comment. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, someone.
Charles,
Go ahead, Charles, I'm sorry.
Well, what I was getting ready to say, I don't know if it making a difference or not, or how it fit. We be coming together, like Rep saying, 3 times a week. And I looked at that 3 times a week. And I'm saying, so we've been teaching and we've been absorbing this up. And I'm thinking it's just like 3 days Jesus went into the grave and he rose. I'm thinking that that's what we doing, is learning how to wake up the dead.
or being resurrected.
Yeah,
There you go. And furthermore, all that what Reb had said, and I mean, it just pulled my mind all in that.
Okay.
I mean, it changed a lot of way you think and how you think if you're really listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was gonna say it's uplifting, but I agree with Charles, it's resurrecting. It's like a whole new mindset. Yeah, I don't have the words either,
yeah,
but a whole new mindset.
yeah,
And I'm still sort of processing it. And in time, I might be able to say exactly what I'm feeling and thinking. But it feels like something's lifted off of me. Something that's been oppressing me is lifted off me. Anyway, so
Thank you.
it's almost a quiet or a still kind of excitement on us that we have gone somewhere, but we've never left our homes, but we have gone on a journey, and we all feel it uplifted now. I mentioned to Pastor something earlier I thought about today. Doesn't this feel so much sweeter than 40 acres and a mule? Because if you take that as your reward, that would have been our reward. We would not have had this experience. Mankind would not have had this experience because we would have taken an earthly reward. But this is far more enlightening, uplifting, meaningful, and I'm like the rest of you. I don't have the words for it, but I too can say I am grateful to everybody on this line. I thank you, and it is a pleasure to be a part of this. Thank you.
Ron, you just said something that resonated with me. You said the word home. It's like going home. Going back to beginning is where home is. And so that's the experience.
Yeah.
The experience of having come home, reconnecting, and now you're ready to go out again. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
That resonates deeply. Mhm.
Mhm.
It does. I want to share this with you before we go. I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and we were talking about church. And we concluded that church is done, as it has been in the past, it's over with. Then we talked about how difficult it is for all of us to come back together in the different places where we were. I'm not sure that that's going to happen. I feel like if I had been able to do that, then we would be in our separate places. COVID exposed religion and so many other things. The COVID brought us closer together than we've ever been. We experienced the closeness when we were in Philly or wherever we would go for our teachers' enclave. It's bigger than that. I have the feeling that we are where the Creator wants us to be. Do I think that we will share the same space again in a physical way? Absolutely, I do. I do. However, the timing of that is not mine. It's not yours. The timing of that comes from the universe. We didn't bring COVID. We didn't choose to do this as we're doing it through Zoom and on the phones. We were forced to do it. Think about it. We didn't have a choice. So we have up to this point been guided by the universe, just following the breadcrumbs. And now we cannot force anything to happen in terms of being in separate places again. We all meet in the same space now. That tells me something. That tells me that all the energy is being brought together because we're on the brink of an explosion. Energy that's separated is strong, but energy that becomes one is even stronger. We meet 3 days a week. The strongest rope is made from 3 strands. Regardless of how many others you add, it does not become any stronger. Just maybe the 3 days we meet is just like the rope. It's not only making us stronger, but it's also bringing us so tightly together until we cannot see anything, excuse me, unless we see all of us as one. So let's flow in the river.
Yes.
Let's flow in the river. I look forward to being physically with you guys again. I miss you so much. And I know the Creator did some things that I don't understand. I don't know who I was talking to, but I said to them, you know, if Phoebe wasn't sick, all of us would be here. At least all the teachers anyway. We would be here in one place. Maybe where we are is where the energy is most needed. Maybe where we are in areas and places where this country has decimated. The most despised people in this nation are Africans and Hispanics. Maybe, Audrey, your energy is needed there in order to wrought change. I don't know. But I do know that I'm not an African. I use that word because we understand it. I am a descendant from a Kabbalah. I descended from the first womb on this earth. I am God. My obligation is to be true to the truth. My obligation is to make sure that everyone with whom I speak understands one thing if they don't understand anything else. The power of life begins with the female, feminine energy. No life comes from any other place. Respect for femininity, respect for females is paramount. We don't embrace anything else except that. That's who we are. Love you guys. We'll do anything in the world for you. And we're going, before you get off, I want Vermel, if you will, to cease recording because I want to say something.